Okay, we're gonna talk about Denmark more. So you were 18 or 19?
19 years old, and I went to the little town of Obenro first, which you and I went to when we were there,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to find the house we lived in. It was on Mulligada number one, and I was in those days, tracting is all we did, every day, all day, tracting, knocking on doors, and I learned to speak and hear the language very quickly. In about 3 years, I mean, 3 months, I was able to, especially be able to do the door approach, which was Good Efu, via missionaire fra Jesu Kristi Kirke, der sidste dags hellige. Må vi godt komme in for snakkerne. Okay. And then you learn the four uh, statements that you have to make, which are things like, and I know God lives, and yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on and on. So Elder Smith, Dwayne Smith, was my first teacher. And the way I learned, he would give me hooded flashcards to memorize the verbs. You memorize verbs in a language, and once you've memorized 7 or 8 verbs and the conjugation of those verbs, you pretty much got the language. And so every night he would flashcards me. And not only that, at midnight, no, excuse me, at 10 o'clock at night, on the Voice of America, on came the jazz hour from New York.
Mm.
And it was blocked every minute of the day by the Russians until 10 o'clock at night. Then it was the jazz hour. So I would conjugate verbs and listen to jazz every single night of the week.
Wow.
And it was there that I learned about everything that I could learn about jazz. In those days, I could tell you anybody that was playing
Mm-hmm.
the minute I heard it. But Elder Smith was a great kid, and we had lots of fun together. And uh, I performed as a girl one time in a play that he and I put together, and sing. Oh, and there was a woman. There was a school teacher, an old maid, that we had to go visit every Wednesday afternoon, and she didn't want anything other than a song,
Oh,
an American song, and so I got to sing to her every Wednesday. It
nice.
didn't matter what song it was, just any song. I
Wow.
got to sing to frickin', no, it was frickin', I can't remember, frickin' something or other. Open Row, though, was after the war, we're talking about 10 years, 15 years after the war
Mm-hmm.
that I was in Open Row. And there was lots of German refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was pretty much a German-speaking town
Oh.
along with Danish. And so I learned to speak a little bit of German while I was there. And my first baptism was a wife of a German refugee, not a refugee, German SS gentleman that had been in prison in England for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And his name was Alf Kroll, Kroll. And his wife was Lydia, I think. And they had a son that was a German guy, but he didn't speak any English at all. An older son that Alf had before he met this woman. Anyway, they were joiners. You know how sometimes there are people that will join anything that comes along.
Yeah.
And they joined the Salvation Army, and they joined the Assembly of God, and then the Mormons knocked on the door. Oh, so
No,
we'll
join the
join
Mormons.
join the Mormons. So anyway, I'll never forget the day that I was able to express myself in Danish, and it was at Christmas time. I got there in November, and it was at Christmas time. I had dinner with a Danish family, and I was able to communicate and understand them, which is neat. And anyway, anyways, then 6 months in Open Row, 3 months with Smith, and 3 months with the guy from Ogden named Clark. I was transferred to Reba, where the Domkirche is. I was there for 3 months with Kierkegaard, and then we went from there to Varda for another 3 months. And I was getting to the point where I couldn't stand him. And so I mistakenly wrote the mission president a letter.
Oh.
And I said, there's a girl who won't leave me alone in Varda, and I'm afraid if it don't get me out of here, I'm going to break the rules of mission. It was true, of course. But I used it as an excuse to get rid of Kierkegaard.
Uh-huh.
And so they brought me to Copenhagen.
Oh, no!
But I became a senior companion.
Oh, okay.
And after 6 months, which is unheard of.
Wow.
And my first companion was a newbie, Arthur Larson. Artur Larson. Great, great guy. He worships me. He follows me in the music and everything. In fact, he came here a little while ago.
Oh my gosh.
To see us. His wife had just died, and he married a new German woman. Anyway, so he was my next companion, and we were together for 3 or 4 months. And after that, I got an SAE from Utah State. It was in the same class as me, named Kearsley. And then he lived in Idaho. So anyway, and then by and by, I had several companions and stuff in Copenhagen, including Dennis Reed, and who was Marilyn Reed's brother. And then I got sent to Uring and became the branch president.
Oh boy.
Uring.
Now, what was it about your personality that they kept promoting you?
I was good, and had more baptism than anybody.
Were you a good salesperson?
Yeah. I had more baptism than anybody in the mission.
You were a good closer?
All of that. You know, you get them on their knees, and I got them.
Uh-huh.
You get people on their knees and they start crying, you got them. And then you close. You say, once we get down the baptism part. That's what I did, you know. I was selling concepts,
yeah,
you know, in language unknown to the rest of the world. But as a branch president of Uring, what was funny was Edith Poticar, who you may have heard about, I don't know. Edith was the head of the Relief Society, and she was in Aalborg, which is 30 miles away. She would have to come and see the Relief Society ladies in Uring. Needless to say, she was a single woman, that she was about 10 years older than me.
Oh. Well, here's to you, Mrs. Robinson.
I never told Mom this.
And that story.
And so she would come, and we would go visit all the ladies in the ward. It wasn't anything serious,
Yeah.
but it was just me and her, and having a good time together, and doing a little kissy poo, but nothing serious.
Well, you were only, what, 19, 20
Well,
years
by
old?
then I was 21.
21, okay.
I was of age.
You were of age, yeah.
But then there was a woman in Uring that had seduced every missionary that had ever been there. And her name is Rolm, R-O-L-M, or Rom, L-M. And she was unbelievable. You go to visit her, and she'd take you in the other room and grab you and everything else.
Oh my gosh.
So I tried to stay away from her as much as possible. And her husband was a well-known attorney
Oh my God.
in Uring. And he wrote me a personal letter. He said, I would advise you not to come and visit my wife. in the past, she has done things with you missionaries that I don't like. So why don't you just plan on staying away?
Whoa.
He
Wow.
wasn't a member.
Wow. So, is this the time when you were going to? When were you going to concerts in
Well, that was typically was
Copenhagen?
before that. Anytime in Copenhagen, you go to concerts. Uh,
So,
all,
how were you getting away with going and doing stuff like that?
what you do is you find a missionary that has the same ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and for the day you exchange.
Mm-hmm.
You give your dumb
Swap.
missionary to the other guy, and say we're just gonna swap the day so that we'll probably have more success today. And then we go downtown in Copenhagen to some bar and drink beer.
I don't think they do that anymore. They probably don't.
I don't know.
So, tell me, when you were, did you go hear any jazz acts when you were in
Oh yeah,
Copenhagen?
oh yeah.
Who did you see?
Clubhouse Montmartre. I became really well acquainted with Dexter Gordon.
Oh wow.
He was there. I didn't see her play, but Ella was all the time dropping into
At
places.
Tivoli, yeah.
And just as Montmartre was a little hole in a wall
Yeah.
about the size of this.
Yeah.
And it was where everybody went
Mm-hmm.
at midnight. And you go there at midnight and stay till 4 in the morning.
Mm.
And but she would drop in there. Dexter Gordon was playing there at the time, and you heard of Niels Henning,
Yeah.
Ørsted Peterson. He was there every night. He played with every single one
Yep.
of the bands that came, or the guys that came to play. He would back them, all of them up. And then Phil Anderson played the piano. So he would play and I would sing
Oh wow.
in that joint. It was open bar and
Mhm.
open mic.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it did or anything, but it was about that time though that Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross came out with the swingers, swing,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I listened to that over and over and over. And I listened to Ella because the U.S. Embassy had a borrow records. And so I would take Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, Take Five,
Mm-hmm.
and Ella.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take it home to my little shack. And I was living in Heller at the time with a kid, but we had our own living quarters. We weren't living with anybody else. And it was great because I borrowed a record player and listened to those all night long, every night, along with the Voice of America Jazz there.
That's fun.